questioning.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your indulgence regarding the recess. My concern was this. When we discuss these items, we have to frame them as a public meeting. I don't feel that any of the content that we've presented that's come forward has not been in the spirit of it, but I do want to frame our meeting as such. So, here we go. Consideration and public hearing regarding text amendments related to place of worship as a use in various sections of the zoning ordinance as advertised according to the State of Maryland Code. So, this is basically understanding that this is a public hearing related to this item. Okay? So, anybody have any concerns related to that item?
No.
We're on
Okay.
page 37. I got overwhelmed with that break.
Sure. No problem.
On page
Okay.
31.
So, basically, it's this.
Okay.
As a procedural issue, when we discuss zoning items such as what we're discussing now, we have to segue at some point in time in a meeting to temporarily close the meeting and move to a public hearing. So I didn't want us to go too far in presentation of the content until we temporarily close the meeting and move to the public hearing phase. And that's what we're doing now.
Okay.
So procedurally, I want to make sure that we are more or less in accord with what's appropriate.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Sweeney.
I was going to make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Sweeney, if you'd kindly make a motion.
I make a motion to close the town meeting.
Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, the motion's been made by Commissioner Sweeney to temporarily close the meeting. Can I
Temporary.
phrase that? way?
Temporary
Okay,
close.
very good. And it's been seconded by Mr. Blanchard. Okay, any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, all in favor, the motion carries 5-0. Okay, so now we turn to the public hearing part of the meeting related to place of worship. Ms. Sipperly, we now turn to you.
Okay. Ordinance number 17-08 is the definitions section, which, as I said, we just inserted a definition for place of worship, which means a structure or place in which worship, ceremonies, rituals, and education pertaining to a particular system of beliefs are held. That's the only change in that section. Do you want me to go through all of the changes?
Just
Makes sense.
a line summary would be sufficient, like a sentence summary
Yeah.
is fine.
Ordinance 1709 had to do with special exception uses, and the only change there was a wording change from churches to places of worship. 1710, uses permitted in the B2 General Business District. Place of worship was added in line Q, along with the existing theater or auditorium. 1711, uses permitted in the RS district, just added place of worship as line E and took churches out of line B. We just took it out of that line and made it on its own line. The next R1 district, again in line B, we took out churches, schools, libraries, and museums out of the residential zone. On that line, we left parks and playgrounds, took out community centers, and then on line H, as I said, we indicated that a private community center within a subdivision could be allowed if it was intended to serve that residential community. This page 38 is just the chart for minimum lot areas, setbacks, and again, that was just a change of wording from churches to place of worship, and also kind of a cleanup wording that needed to be done under accessory structures. And then And if you change the R1 zone, it automatically changes the R2 zones because our zoning ordinance is written in such a way that R2 and R3 depend on R1. So if we change R1, you'll need to notice on page 40, it says uses permitted in the R2 district. It says any use permitted in the R1 district. So, and then it adds a couple more. And then for the R3 zoning, it refers back to the R2 district. So there weren't any wording changes in those two sections, so we didn't have to do a ordinance change, but we had to realize that the effect is that you're eliminating basically churches from all the R1, 2, and 3 zones. 17-12, village zone. Again, line B. We took churches out of the line that says churches, schools, libraries, playgrounds, and community centers. And added it at the end on page 42, line N, place of worship, theater, and auditorium. And then 17-13, that was just something about height limitations, and again, it was just changing word churches and temples to places of worship. And that's all of them.
Okay, so for the purposes of the hearing, we don't have anybody signed up at this time to speak to these changes. However, is there anybody who is interested in speaking to these issues related to the hearing? Good evening, sir.
Hello, everybody. I'm Pastor John Talcott at Christ Community Church. I did notice looking over this that there was an exclusion in the R1, R2, and R3, which I disagree with. I really don't think churches should be excluded anywhere. So that's basically my comment.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So, purposefully, we turn to closing the public hearing.
Can I ask a question? Is
Oh,
this
sure.
appropriate to ask now? Or?
Sure, yes.
Okay, so my question is, what is the definition of churches and why is it crucial? What is the purpose of changing it to places of worship? What is the purpose of that?
To broaden it. I mean, some people in the past, in other places, would have said, well, we meant church but not temple, or church but not mosque. So it broadened it from church. You can't, in your ordinances, you can't discriminate against any type of religion.
So it's more inclusive for a place of worship? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have, well, there is another place of worship that's going in on Creamy Roadway. They're moving from the school out to Seaton Square, and they needed that change too because now even though they're going into an old business location, they're going to be a place of worship now. So I guess it broadens it to that spectrum so where people understand it's not a church that looks like a church. It can be any room or place of worship. That's what it,
Oh, so you're talking about the physical structure of
Yes.
a church. I see. It's not the definition of, so we're not inviting in, someplace like the KKK because they are worshiping things that we don't believe in to have a building,
Right.
right? It's not opening it up to anybody.
You cannot,
is.
Well,
you cannot
Technically, it is.
discriminate in your code.
Okay.
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 Yeah.
I just need clarification. And boy,
Sure.
you've done your research, Miss Zipperly. I am so impressed with you.
Well, I started out doing a search through the code for the word church and something else, and it came up with actually more than we needed to actually address. some of the things were actually outside of the zoning. So we narrowed it down, and the planning commission met twice about it and had some good discussions. We had some other public input at those meetings, and I think we came up with things that meet the intent of the federal law, which was passed in the year 2000 and or 2006, and it was something that really should have been done previously, but just never had been. But the big thing is having it. You're expanding that whole B2 zoning to include, specifically include places of worship, because basically, if you build a theater, you can't really say you can only use it for giving speeches. You can't exclude by omission, basically, religious use.
Okay, any further questions?
I'd like to ask a question. Actually, it's touching on what Pastor John commented on. Specifically, on page 37, just for my clarification, R1 district, and then tying into page 40, it talks about R2 and R3, so it kind of follows along. You have what's allowed in R1, and then in R2, it's everything in R1 and then the following. And then in R3, it's everything in R2 and the following. And throughout all these ordinances, there are instances where the word churches was struck through, and now it's being replaced by place of worship. But in R1, and consequently R2 and R3, churches has been removed, and there is no reference to place of worship. I know there is a private community center reference, but there's no replacement there. So why
The residential zone.
why is there no replacement?
Because in the purpose, for one thing, of the residential zones was primarily residential,
Okay.
and because similar to a theater or other building like that, the amount of land and the nature of a church or place of worship building is quite different from your average residential subdivision. That's why we put it in the RS district, because those are our larger lots. Someone on the planning commission did ask if you wanted to have people over to your house and have a prayer meeting. That's fine, but and I did inquire to the attorney on that, and he said, but once it becomes impacting on the neighborhood in parking or noise or that sort of thing, then it is something other than a residential use. So since we expanded quite a bit of the town to accommodate that type of, it's kind of like form-based zoning. You build the building, and what you do in it, if it has seats and a stage or whatever, what you use it for is up to you. And we should not say that we should not have excluded churches from that. But on the other hand, if you, in your residential zone, if you want to allow for a large building like a church, should you also allow theaters and auditoriums? I mean, think of it as the structure and the land use rather than what's going on in the building.
I don't have the map here with me,
Okay.
but it seems like in the R1 district, there are some larger properties that are not small like a residential. And I don't know that we should limit it.
This was a recommendation from the planning commission, right?
Right.
These are all recommendations from your planning commission. You directed Ms. Sipperly to take it to the planning commission, and these were discussions that the planning commission had, and these are the recommendations that they came back with. They looked at all the zoning and all the zoning districts, and these are the things that they came back with. This is what their recommendation is.
There are 2 sessions.
Yeah, they had 2 meetings to discuss it.
And we did.
Okay.
And they didn't want it consider churches in the residential, I guess, because if you allow the churches in the residential, you have to allow the the theaters and the auditoriums too, and they didn't think that would be appropriate use for, we didn't have the room or the, if would you like a theater or auditorium beside your house in your residential unit? I don't know if you would like that or not, but
I'm in the village zone.
yeah, well, you're in the village zone, but I mean, in Pembroke or Brookfield, I don't know if they would like that there, but I know I wouldn't.
I don't think it would be well received.
No.
And I would imagine it would lean more toward not so much a place of worship, but the idea of a gathering place and the number of vehicle trips it would generate.
Yeah.
And that would conflict with in those specifically neighborhood design where the kids play, where Pembroke Woods doesn't have sidewalks, the kids play in the streets. Where Brookfield is, you have a lot of dead ends, you have people playing in the courts.
So, obviously,
Kids.
you are the expert, Ms. Sipperly. I am not. I probably should get a class from you. Can somebody, if they are a religious institution, if they see a property that's in the residential zone, because I know people who buy houses can get their houses rezoned to be commercial. Can they apply to get that one piece of property rezoned if it's a doable, agreeable thing?
First of all, an individual residential property could not be rezoned to be commercial.
Ever?
It's called spot zoning, and you have to have more than one piece of property. Yeah, you need a little lesson someday.
Yeah,
But,
I need a
I mean,
lesson.
it's
I'll
complicated.
bring lunch.
But I did go back to the town attorney on that, and can't remember the exact words, but it was, for instance, again, if you want to just have some people over for a small meeting that didn't affect anything in the neighborhood, that's fine. That's your personal single-family home. But there's also different setback requirements and lot sizes and things for larger uses. But you could not get any property, for instance, any lot, say Ramblewood in Brookfield or something, you could not take one of those lots and say, I want to just take this one lot and rezone it to commercial so I can have a store there.
No, I get the logic. I do get the logic. Up until this point, churches, schools, libraries, and museums have been allowed in the R1.
Apparently, yes.
Yes.
What was the
And-
mindset then to have a more vibrant city center where businesses and houses are all?
Well, it's kind of a traditional and older, for instance, Main Street. That's got houses, churches, all kind of grew up together over time. And now the only church that we have that's in an R1 zone is St. Joseph's, which obviously was there before zoning. And I'm not quite sure how that decision was made to have that area be R1.
I guess we'd have to look back in the history books.
Well, quite a ways back, I'm afraid. But it could easily be village zone because of the size of the lots, the density of population and things. But it made sense in terms of the type of land use that is involved with something like a church or any other. That's why we made the community center thing something that if you did want to have a community center to serve your residential subdivision, you could still have a little building that you could have meetings in, like your HOA meetings or that sort of thing. But we don't have any museums that are in all these other things that you mentioned, the museums and libraries, those are in our institutional zones. And so is the school, both schools. but it's kind of a older approach to zoning that led to
Right.
that wording.
The library used to be. The library used to be on the square.
Yeah.
And I remember it being beside the fair hall. So it used to be on the square at one time. So, and then it changed down here to the community center. But we're trying to, the planning and zoning, I think, so I've only been on it for a little while. And, I did take a class on it here. You can take an online
We could go
class.
together.
I already did. You can take it
Oh,
here.
okay,
You-
okay.
It's in on. But you, and I need to go to MML so I can get some further information. But I think they're trying to make our town more viable for future. For, keep residential and keeping,
Right,
kind of, you don't want to stick a church over here or a museum over here in
right.
the middle of the houses.
If you look at vibrant city centers, there's all these different businesses, residential together, and I'm probably making waves, so I apologize. Brookfield is very exclusive. When you walk around Brookfield, it doesn't lead you to town. It's sort of like its own community, and it's not part of the vibrant city center. So when you're talking about a town like this, if you're future-minded and you're thinking about growing the city center, bringing more businesses in, as you add developments, you make them multi-zoned so that people can walk the town, they can be in an active zone instead of exclusively in the neighborhood.
Right.
Right.
The road should all lead to town when a development's made. So people can walk, they're not just walking in their cul-de-sac.
Right. What you're talking about, like the 1950s design, which is what those represent, versus the traditional neighborhood development, which is what Emmitsburg does have, and you're talking about expanding, and that makes
So
sense.
my
Sure.
love of the town would say, let's keep the vibrant city center as we develop and we're looking to the future, that we're all an inclusive, united community instead of, these are the Brookfield people and these are the people, and
Sure, there's social engineering, but at the same time, people choose where they live of their own free will, and the connection, I've been, that's something I've been working on forever, and still we're waiting for that sidewalk to get done, but there's that connection.
right.
The other
But
part
even
is.
the way the roads are laid out.
Sure, absolutely. You want rectilineal like graph
Right.
paper, and there's that walkability perspective. Sure, it's a 1950s design. Some people are very comfortable and prefer that. Others
It's a very
want.
modern design too, it's not just 1950s.
Well, the cul-de-sac design that
Right,
that was
that.
popularized in the
Right.
50s with the post-war boom. The long and short of it is, I don't think anybody argues with you the idea of like mixed use.
Right,
Okay, home above the storefront. I think everybody's on board with that. But also, people are choosing the density that they want. Okay, people, they go for what they are comfortable with and what they want to be comfortable with. So
well then they,
that's why people choose Pembroke Woods and why they chose Brookfield or they chose Silo Hill or Emmett Gardens. I mean, that's part of the mindset. Other people, they chose Main Street because they want that vibrancy. They want that, that energy.
so we're not thinking to grow our city center into this more vibrant, I just wanna, don't wanna
No, I'm
limit
not saying
us.
that. I'm absolutely not saying that.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm not
you're-
arguing.
Okay,
I'm just
you're
saying
putting
that-
words in my mouth that aren't there.
No, I'm
Okay.
just generating more conversation, I apologize. 'cause
Okay, no,
I don't
okay,
feel
all right.
satisfied with this.
Okay.
And
That's-
I
that's
might add, when Pastor Talcott was looking for a place within, that was zoned for a church, all I could offer him was a couple of residential. One was the R3 lot, which is Bollinger's lot there, north Avenue, and like the Fraley lot is zoned R1, I believe, and then the other half of the Emmett Ridge subdivision, there really wasn't much opportunity for land that you could put any large facility on. And the other thing is that R3 zoning is our last piece of multifamily zoned land. And also, walkability can be a factor for a church, and we have B2 zoning right along Creamery Road, larger parcels. So, as far as residentially zoned land in Emmitsburg, other than if somebody annexed something, say out North Seaton, and wanted to do large lot zoning, that's why we left it in the larger lot zoning. But currently, we don't have anything zoned large lot zoning within the town. It's just, and I agree that, you know, it might have been in hindsight, a nice idea to follow the street pattern of the town
Agreed.
as the town expanded, but that was early 2000s, and the sort of traditional subdivision with the cul-de-sacs was still the mode. So you can't really undo it, and it got platted.
So we do have a future plan for the town that we've already created. Does this zoning work with that future goal and plan that we have already established?
I don't know if you got a copy of the 2015 comprehensive plan
did,
or not.
And
Take
I read
a look
it,
at,
but that was a while ago, and my
Yeah.
memory will not
And
recall that.
once you do that, you take any requests for rezonings, and in the course of doing the comprehensive plan, you consider, even if there hasn't been a request, you consider what might be a good thing to do, which we did in the 2009 plan. We consolidated a lot of little different zones into one big general commercial swath that's off West Main and down Creamery Road, so that you didn't have all these little highway commercial and general commercial, and so it's more usable. Just we're trying to add this use in. But that's the time to make the sort of philosophical decisions about what to do with the town. And then you have a comprehensive rezoning process. And in the last time, we made some properties on East Main, on the other side of the bridge. We changed those to neighborhood commercial use. There's three or four lots there that now could have an office in them, and one of them does. It's a marketing firm. Fits in with the nature of the neighborhood, and they're using the residential, but that's our B1 zone. Just kind of commercial light. And there will be a sidewalk, by the way, all the way to Timber Mill. It's just that,
I know
And-
it's coming.
no, I've gotten questions about that, so this is a good chance to.
I'm going to segue.
It's just that they have to do some fill there
Sure.
in order to put a sidewalk on it.
I will have my footprint on it, much like the accused Mr. Click. Okay, we go forward. So, Commissioner Buckman,
Yes,
are you okay?
emotionally or
You-
physically?
yeah, all of the above. Have you gotten the information that you're seeking?
Yeah, I've gotten the information.
Okay.
Am I content? No, probably not. but-
Okay. Well, for where we are tonight, I'd like to call this to a vote so we can move forward. Are you okay with moving in that direction?
I guess.
Okay. All right. So, with that in mind, we've spoken to the 3 items. Okay, actually, the 5 items. Yeah. All right. So, we'll take them sequentially. I want to make sure I'm starting at the correct one.
1708.
So I'll go in the sequence presented here on 30, starting on page 31 rather than page 30, where we have the ordinances for review listed there. Okay. To that end, is there a motion to accept the modifications as presented in ordinance number 17-08?
17-08.
I will make a motion to accept ordinance 1708 with modifications as presented.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second for the motion?
I'll
Second. Go ahead.
Okay, so the motion's been made by Commissioner Ritz. It's been seconded by Commissioner Buckman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anybody against? The motion carries 5-0. Okay, we now turn to ordinance number 17-09. Is there a motion to accept 17-09 as modified?
I'll make a motion to accept ordinance, where's the number? 1709
Okay,
as modified.
very good, thank you. Is there a second for Commissioner Buckman's motion?
I'll second it.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Buckman. It's been seconded by Commissioner Blanchard. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0. We move on to ordinance number 17-10. Is there a motion to accept ordinance 17-10 as modified?
I make a motion to accept ordinance 17-10 as modified.
Very good. Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second that.
Very good. The motion's been made by Commissioner Sweeney. It's been seconded by Commissioner Buckman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against? No. The motion carries 5-0. Is there a motion to accept ordinance number 17-11 as presented?
I'll make a motion to accept ordinance number 17-11 as amended.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second it.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Blanchard, seconded by Commissioner Sweeney. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody against?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. Commissioners Sweeney, Blanchard, and O'Donnell in favor. Commissioners Buckman and Ritz against. Thank you. Motion carries. All right. Is there a motion to accept ordinance number 17-12 as modified?
I make a motion to accept ordinance 17-12 as modified.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Is there a second for the motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. The motion's been made by Commissioner Sweeney, seconded by Commissioner Buckman. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any votes against? The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Turning now to ordinance 17-13. Is there a motion to accept ordinance number 17-13 as modified?
I'll make a motion to accept ordinance 17-13 as modified.
Thank you. Is there a second for Commissioner Buckman's motion?
Second.
Thank you. There is a motion by Commissioner Buckman, seconded by Commissioner Ritz. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anybody against? No. The motion carries 5-0. Okay, and I believe that brings us to agenda item 4, related to the town stormwater management as related to update on MS4, the municipal separate sewer system, storm sewer system permit.
Yeah, 46.
I'll do a brief introduction. I'll turn over to Ms. Sipperly. Ms. Sipperly and I have attended a couple of meetings with MDE and the county over the MS4 permit requirements that are due at the end of the year, as well as additional requirements as far as the impervious surfaces are concerned, that we'll need to get working on, and Ms. Sipperly can provide the updates for you.
As the letter states in your packet on page 46. We already did.
They did. Go ahead.
We're okay?
Yep.
No, we're okay. All right. Moving forward.
We had a permit, all right, you're done. The National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, you've probably heard it referred to as NPDES when we're referring to things with our, like, sewage treatment plant and things. This is a program that towns of our size are under a permit. For short, it's called MS4 because that says municipal, and then 4 S's after that is separate storm sewer systems. And what this permit is about is ultimately the Chesapeake Bay, but water quality anywhere between here and the Chesapeake Bay. And municipalities of our size, up till now, have had to do a number of things and document that in order to satisfy the requirements of the permit. Those are things like public education and outreach about stormwater. And we do have literature out in our literature rack, and also we have the, you may have noticed the little metal medallions on all the stormwater grates. That's part of this program. Public involvement, that's part of what the medallions are. About 2008, there was a tree planting project along the rill out here, which we need to do more. Illicit discharge detection and elimination. I had always been under the impression that the county was inspecting storm drains here to see whether there were any illicit discharges, basically pollution. But there are some that we are responsible for. State Highway is responsible for any of them that are coming off of their roads. And we have a few that are part of a town storm drain system. So that's one thing that I found out this year at our meeting. Construction site stormwater runoff control, Frederick County does take care of that for us. Post-construction management, also Frederick County. And then pollution prevention and good housekeeping, we are supposed to have programs in place like the street sweeping, and we couldn't do more as far as keeping track of the stormwater ponds that are around town on the various subdivisions. So we had been doing reports and had all of our stormwater management ponds mapped, and until recently never got an awful lot of feedback from the state. Well, apparently EPA, not EBPA, the Environmental Protection Agency started auditing these permits. And I can't remember what town it was, somewhere. Bowie apparently got a $10,000 fine recently for not having all of these things up to speed, basically. So as I said, until recently, we really hadn't gotten an awful lot of feedback from the state. But Ms. Willits and I recently went to 2 different meetings. One was sort of getting up to speed on what we should have been doing over a little more detail and a little more just documenting things that we already are doing. But coming up also, we have to come up with a plan for reducing the amount of impervious surfaces. That means that water can't get through, to reduce the amount of runoff and pollutants, like off of a parking lot, all the oil and anything that comes out of a vehicle. When it rains, you get that first flush of pollutants running off. And it doesn't mean that we have to start tearing up pavement, but there's a whole system of sort of a point system. For instance, if we did do a stream restoration and tree planting along Willow Rill as an example, we get a percent. We have to achieve a percent of reduction of impervious surfaces, but planting trees and that sort of thing counts. So fortunately, it kind of coordinates with some of the other things we're doing with the green team.
Good.
And with tree planting, the Lions Club has a program, so we're looking into all those things, but we have to, by the end of the year, get reports done for 2016 and 17 as far as our existing program, but we also have to develop the, what we're going to do in the future. And it'll involve some training that we can do online from MDE. But again, it's something that it's a state requirement that we have to meet or suffer
Right.
the consequences.
Exactly.
So is there education, training requirement for like children? Is that part of the whole package or is that, I'm making sure I
Training,
understand.
the training will be for staff on,
But you said education also, but is that,
There's public education and outreach, and that can take a number of different forms.
Right.
like
Right.
pamphlets, additions to our newsletter, things to that regard. But basically, this update was to let you know that this is a big deal. This was a state mandate that we were just made aware of. It was the first part of the summer. That is something that we have got to come in line with, and it's going to take a lot of initiatives. It is going to take some town funding to start some of these programs. We need to street sweep more. We need to do stream restoration. We're looking to see if the riprap that we did at the lake gives us any sort of points. But it is going to take a lot of staff time, and it is going to take some town funding to get these, to bring us in line with the MS4 permit, and then also to bring us in line with the reduction of the impervious surface. So we just kind of wanted to give you a quick update on it, and there'll be more information as we get more involved in it.
Did they give us a hard timeline, a deadline when they want to hear specifically?
December 26, 2017.
It's in
Okay.
that letter.
And do you feel you have the resources in hand at this time?
December 31st. Right now, we do.
Okay.
Right now, we do.
And regarding like the vision, like the street sweeping thing,
That's
Just-
easy.
is that something we can co-op with,
We have a
Vermont,
street, we have
we
a
We already
street,
street
do.
sweep, but we need, the recommendation is do it 2 times a month. I think right now we currently do it maybe once a month. So
Okay.
those are little things that we can do.
and by street sweeping, we mean like a mechanical device or actually a crew out there, or what are we talking about?
street sweeper,
We actually have a device,
yes.
do we?
Yes.
Oh, boy. There are a lot of places, I don't know if I've ever seen that. I'm kind of excited. Okay.
Your garage.
I wish it were. I could use it there, believe you me.
We'll have Jimmy call you next time they're sweeping the streets
Sure.
Usually-
I call shotgun.
around events like the,
Yeah, they do it for big events like fallen firefighters and parades
Sure,
and things
sure,
like
sure.
that. But it's also making sure we have programs and protocol in place in case there is an illicit discharge.
Right.
If something happens, what are our protocols, what are our procedures? You know, and we have certain procedures in place, we need to update them, we need to train our staff, and we'll get through it, and it's
Sure.
due by the end of the year, and then we'll have to jump right into the other aspect of it. But we'll be back with either more information or approvals or asking for money.
Now, on the other side, is this something that you could get input from the green team, or is that a different?
Yes, we
tie-in?
will be.
Okay, all right.
We will be working with the green team, because some
Okay.
of the programs the green team has implemented, and some of the things that we already do are gonna
Overlap.
get us points.
Great, okay.
Now, can I ask a question? You said the state's going to take care of their storm drain?
State Highway is responsible for, they have their own permits.
So, so east and west and north and south are state streets
Right.
in our town, so they're responsible for them?
Mm-hmm.
So we're only responsible for the back streets and the,
As far as storm drains go,
yeah,
you know, street sweeping, we do Main Street,
yeah.
you know, so we get credit for that. But as far as,
Riprap should be credit because you're maintaining the, you know, you're draining through the stone, that's why you put that there.
and
Takes
we
the
did
sediment
ask, if land outside of the town could be counted toward the town efforts, and they said yes. And we've got, you know, 1,000 acres up there that, and we just did
Right.
some of it now, and I guess some of it next year.
Right, the riprap of the lake is a 3-year process.
Now,
And-
do our biofilters count?
Probably not, but,
Because the ones in town, we do have ones right in town.
but that's not a stormwater.
Yeah, it is storm water. It, you know,
Which biofilters are you
One
talking?
behind the post office.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking of the ones in the sewage treatment plant.
No, I'm talking
Yeah,
about
okay.
the natural ones that the
Right.
new ones we just put in. They
Mhm.
count.
And we've inventoried all of those. I think part of it, on other towns also found out that part of it is just documenting things that they're already
Right.
doing. And they just want more evidence. It's kind of like getting audited on your
Mhm.
income
Isn't it?
tax.
I mean, Dollar General put the biofilters in front of the
Right.
building.
Right.
Yeah.
So is this something we'd want to hear an update on in November? Is that something the board would want to hear?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Is that reasonable for town staff?
Yes.
Just to understand where we are in the timeline with December 21st being our hard deadline. Okay. All right. Staff, do you feel you've presented everything you need to present related to this item?
I think so.
Okay. So let's turn our attention, if we could, please, to our agenda for the October 2nd, 2017 town meeting. First thing I think would be swearing in of a commissioner.
Swearing in of your mayor and your commissioner.
Swearing in of a commissioner? No. Sorry. All right. Anything else beyond that?
I have, which the mayor already mentioned, we
That's funny.
would like to provide updates on community-related projects.
Okay.
Number 3, this is the mayor's recommendation, would be new Route 140 bridge at Flat Run, request dedication in the name of Jerry L. Myers, who is a firefighter from Vigilant Hose that was killed in the line of duty, or died in the line of duty.
Where's this bridge again? I'm sorry.
The Flat Run Bridge, 140,
The
where
new
they're doing
one?
the work,
Our new bridge.
Oh.
the brand new bridge.
Jubilee.
Right next to the other bridge that was just recently dedicated, right there, by Jubilee.
Yeah, that
not
one's
just
over
in-
15, this is the one
Yeah,
over.
okay.
What was his name, Terry?
Jerry.
Jerry
L.
Myers.
Myers,
Jerry.
M-Y-E-R-S.
I remember-
Is that Wanda's husband?
I remember Terry Myers from the late 90s died.
Yeah, I think it's
Terry.
Wanda's husband.
Terry, isn't it?
It's Terry,
My
I
paper
thought.
says Jerry.
Who died
Said-
February
Unless I did
15th.
not read the
Late
handwriting.
90s?
Yes.
Is that a T or is that a J?
I know Terry.
I got it
Could be
as
Terry.
His
I got it as
son
a-
was, yeah, because I think his son,
Is
Wanda's
that a
his
T or
wife.
J?
Hey, Joe, Terry?
Terry.
That's a
Terry,
T.
okay.
Okay, so it's
Okay.
Terry.
Terry.
There was a Jerry, there was a
I
Terry.
can't read whoever's handwriting this
Well, I
was.
stand corrected because I was listening. I'm glad you
I'm
corrected
pretty
us.
sure it is.
Getting old.
It's your handwriting.
This is
Okay,
not
so
So it's Terry.
dedication related to Terry L. Myers.
Terry L. Myers.
Okay.
Line of duty death.
mine. Nice
Okay.
try.
So that's number 3.
Sad.
For admin business, and this is for discussion only, we would like to discuss setting up a fund for employee payout at the time of separation of employment. And we have talked about this previously. As of June 30th of 2017, if all your staff that were eligible to retire retired, your payout would be about $128,000.
Oh,
So
okay.
what we would like to do is set a percentage aside each year. So, for example, when Dave Howler left or Donna, we paid out a lot of money up front. This way we can start planning for
Sure.
it. And we'll have a hard figure on it after the audit comes through in October.
Okay.
We are projecting to have a surplus from our fiscal year 17 budget that we can, one, put towards projects, but also to set up a fund to set this money aside.
Is this sort of like an enterprise fund like we had before?
It would be probably just like a fund to fund.
Yeah, like, that's what we did when we was trying to save money for
Because
the water.
sewer and water, you already do it. There's already a
Mr. Ritz?
dedicated line in there.
Second exit fund. Okay, so
So, and then, that was it.
just to clarify though, would this be related to accrued leave time and items like that?
Right,
Okay,
when
okay.
you separate from employment, you're eligible to be, to be paid for your vacation, your personal, and 50% of your sick.
Okay, great. So we have swearing in of commissioner and mayor, and then we have update on community-related projects.
Yes?
And we have the new Route 40 bridge Consideration of dedication in memory of Terry with a T, Terry L. Myers, as a result of a line of duty death. That's really, really sad. And an administrative business item for discussion
Yes,
related to establishing a fund for employee payout.
at time of separation of employment.
Okay? Okay.
Okay?
Any other items?
Nope.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Okay. All right. Is there a motion to close the meeting?
I make a
Sorry,
motion.
sorry. Do we
I have
accept
one
this
other
agenda
item
as
after you
presented?
approve this.
Okay,
I
sorry.
I accept the agenda as presented. I do have. Can I say something before we second it?
Sure.
Just going forward, I mean, this might be my last meeting, but sometimes it's a little confusing when you're online, and I know what the agenda items are because I'm here. Maybe somebody didn't watch the meeting; they might be interested. Sometimes it's a little vague. Maybe it would get more resident input if they knew, maybe even some bulleted items.
We have to present the agenda as you vote on it. So the language you choose tonight is how we are supposed to present it. So when you approve it, we can put it in the language that you think people will understand.
I think for next month we're good to go. Maybe starting in October if I'm still around. Because I mean sometimes there's, does everybody know what I'm saying?
I agree, and I push for this. I do.
Okay.
And sometimes the board is with me, and sometimes the board looks at me cross-eyed. I mean, I get
Sometimes
I
it's
get verbose.
kind of
I know
late.
that.
And
Right, I
you know,
understand that,
so-
but you and I are of the same mind of, I think it would incur more involvement. That
Yeah.
would be the dividend. So to that end, would you want to have, for example, with the swearing-in ceremony, after that, for the update on community-related projects, would you want them listed? Okay.
maybe an example.
Okay, well, as related to the bridge, the Route 140 bridge project, the dog park,
Those are
the sidewalk
revitalization.
project, the
Yeah.
revitalization of the square.
And then even an et cetera. If it was just like,
Swimming pool,
a couple items.
dog park, I think I said that twice now, and so on. So could we have listed also the actual projects that are going to be spoken about,
Okay.
if that's okay? And then for the new Route 140 bridge, is that sufficiently clear?
Yes.
Okay. Administrative business, consideration of a fund for employee payouts related to accrued leave, or related to accrued,
At time of separation of employment.
okay, at time of separation of employment, okay? Would that suffice?
That suffices.
Okay. And I agree with you, but again, it's late, everyone gives me the dirty skunk eye, and here we are.
So it's how we
So-
approve it. Okay,
Oh, I'm not
that
worried
makes
about being
sense.
late.
Yes.
I don't worry
Great,
about that.
thank
That's how
you.
you approve it.
I'm
And I
not
have one
done
more
one.
thing before you close.
Yes, ma'am.
So go ahead and vote on that if you'd like.
Okay, so, can we just do this as a consent item? Do we have consent for the agenda, as accepting the agenda as
Modified.
modified?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have a unanimous decision there,
Yes.
very good. Okay,
Are you going to have your second meeting in October, which would be October 16th, for consideration of the National City sewer water line warranty
Sewer
public hearing? Because we have to advertise it 15 days ahead of time. So we have to make a decision on that prior to October 2nd.
I think we should. Anybody else agree,
Agreed.
disagree?
Agree.
It's good. I'm good.
Okay. And just so we frame this, okay, the issue is we see value in the insurance, it seems, as a board. We agree that it has value for any potential person who chooses to participate.
Yes.
The issue is the town formally endorsing something like this.
Yes.
Endorsing a single company's product. Okay, and I think that's the hope, to hear feedback from the community if they are comfortable with the board endorsing a singular company that provides a special product.
I have a question that came up in my head.
Okay.
Do we have to only endorse them? Are we prohibited from, at the same time, telling people they could get a waiver in their homeowner's policy? They could add that onto their homeowner's policy, or there's other companies available out there if you seek to look at them. I don't want them to think this is the only thing.
It is the only thing.
As I understand it, this is the only company offering this specific
I
product.
don't think that's true.
which I'm fine by, but
Yeah.
if that's not true, come forward with whomever it is, because that's what our bone is. That's what we're picking over right now. If there's more than one company, we'd love to hear them come to the fore and say, hey, we can compete. But I think we haven't heard because we haven't seen it. So if there is one, yeah, bring it. I mean, we'd like to talk about it in that meeting. That would be great.
But I think that your homeowner's policy, you can add these things to it also.
You might be able to put some sort of a rider, but I don't know if I don't
I
know
just
if
wanna
it,
educate
right,
people.
sure. I don't know if it offers the same price point, but again, we're not obligated to anything right now, so this is definitely a discussion worth fleshing out in that meeting. So yes, bring it, we'll talk about it, there's,
All right. Got
the
homework.
Franklin quote, there's nothing so dangerous that we can't talk about it.
But you started.
You know what I mean?
Thank you.
So, okay. So the answer is yes, we intend to have that meeting,
Okay.
please.
We'll advertise.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so with that in mind, is there a motion to close the meeting?
Can I make a motion to close the town meeting?
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion carries 5-0.